give me one photograph that is you, this would be probably the one that I'd choose. The last time we had an event in this kind of area, I rented that and drove to Galveston back for a few days. It was a Z06 just after it come out on Hertz. Absolutely fantastic. I love driving fast with the top down. But for those who don't know me, tiny bit about where I've got to from here. I trained as a kindergarten teacher. After I taught for a while, I ran off and joined the circus. So I cut my teeth in live productions, everything from children's theatre up to very large music events. You can ask me about who the famous ones were later. But as part of that, there was a shift in the industry to using technology. So projection became part of. I will tell you the answer to the question. The first band to use live projection on tour was Depeche Mode. I wasn't on the tour, but I was involved in advising people on how to do the projection. That's how long ago it goes. But I became a specialist in AV programming and ended up running a business, doing events, and particularly doing the technical side. And I used FileMaker to run my own business. I was a classic in-house developer. Internet didn't exist. I didn't know that other people did this for a job. And I've been doing this full-time for about 15 years. Bunch of specialist areas that I may or may not have spoken about or written about in the past. But I particularly work at the moment in higher education and with small businesses. And my current favourite topic, and has been for 3 years, is OData. So you get the benefit of my knowledge. Why am I doing this? Well, I sat in the room this time last year and heard Clay talk about where Claris was going to develop the product. And he talked about the fact that they're going to focus on, A, moving where OData was to the next level up of compliance, and eventually have it replace the ODBC, JDBC way of connecting to FileMaker. And I went, that's brilliant, that's my next year's presentation sorted then. He repeated that down in Australia at the Australian conference, so he's not lying. What we're going to do today is unpack a bit of what that might mean, because at that time it was in a future version, it's now here. So in about half an hour, I'm going to save you several hours of reading the documentation, okay? Before we dive in, one of the key things for me about OData is that now FileMaker is a grown-up component in the data source world. SAP is built on top of OData. Microsoft Graph is built with OData. Several other systems you can talk to with OData, Oracle and things like that. Now FileMaker, your FileMaker data, can be reached through OData by somebody who doesn't know anything about the way we put it together, all the mad kind of structures that we create. Somebody else can query our data and do things with it. So people who write web services, we're just another grown-up source, okay? I think that's a really key thing to understand. I'm going to talk about things that we can do with it. But actually, anybody who talks OData, it's a very technical, specialized, it's like a special German. If you talk that language, you can get our data into what you're doing. So FileMaker has now become an API to the outside world. Internally, the reasons why it's important is it allows us to do queries that are independent of context. Everything we've done till now is based on the layout. The things are either on the layout or they're not. They fail if you try and set a field and it's not on the layout. This removes us from our layout dependence. Obviously, it uses basic authentication, not a token. It's not any less secure than sending the username and password to get the token in the first place. You just send it every time. That's a philosophical argument, I think. So it's an API which talks JSON, apart from the one place we'll talk about where it doesn't. But it is a JSON-based API. And in terms of development, I think, for me, it's a really key thing because it allows us to do that thing called separation of concerns. Here's a thing, here's another thing. Just get OData to talk between them. We can separate these areas. So when Clay said, oh, we're going to make OData 4.01 compliant, there are several levels at which that can be true. They can be the minimal version of that, the intermediate, or the advanced version. Let's guess which one Claris have done so far, shall we? If you read the specs, there's a list of, well, you've got to do all the things in the version before, and then you must do this, and you must not do this, and you might do this, and you could do this, okay? That's how it works. But it's not a FileMaker thing, FileMaker implementing something that is an external standard. If you really want to read about it, follow the link afterwards. That's where you can read up the documents. The highlight is new or improved headers, new or improved preferences, operators, system queries, and operators now don't need a dollar prefix. Okay, that's what we're going to do for the next while. But before we get there, something which is not yet documented, even though I've been giving this talk for 6 months, is the fact there is a difference between 4.0 in the previous version of Claris Server and 4.01, which breaks existing code. Okay? In version 4, that's the kind of JSON you might expect back. Now, I ask for a count a lot of the time to save me doing a JSON list values and getting the list of them. I just say, get me the count, please. That's what you would see in version 4 at OData.count. And obviously, it's quite complex because it's got a dot in it. There's a very difficult thing about how we extract that. In version 4.01, it now just returns at count. So if you have your FileMaker script that's looking for at OData.count, it's now broken. And yes, very genuinely, I had to go through systems, fixing them when I knew I was moving the server. So there is something negative about this move. It breaks things. All the at OData preferences are not there. So all the examples today, screen grabs from Postman, not necessarily expecting you to read along. I'm going to point out the key things. And obviously afterwards you can zoom in on the PDF. So version 4.01, if we do a query, I'm going to see at context at the beginning. It is possible to make a 4.01 server, latest version, behave like a 4.0 server. It's possible to make your brand new Mustang behave like a 1950s Mustang. Mostly it involves taking off several of the leads off the cylinders and putting a big lump of concrete in the back. You can do it, and let's prove it. We've turned on this header. Okay, so the header is the max version I want you to give back is 4.0. I turned that on, and the back is 4.01. The front is 4.01, behaving as if it's 4.0. So it's put it all back. Okay. Don't necessarily know why you'd want to do that, because there's some other features you lose, but that's just pointing out that you can if you need to. So if I'm putting $count is true to the end of the string, the back is what I'm going to get back now. The front is what I would have got back. So that proves that there is a difference. You just need to know about it. It might not affect you, but you do need to know about it. So now a full response might look something like this. Very simple file I've used for the demo. It's got some clients, it's got some projects. The projects have fields that we're interested in, which are a total, a description, a TODAZ, which is a date for today, a timestamp, a cost, and a status. Okay, you're going to see those in the queries that we do. Jesse?
Is projects a base table, a table occurrence, or a layout?
Project is a base table occurrence on the graph. Okay, so it's whatever you name. So it's not the base table, it's the base table occurrence on the graph. So you can have the same projects called something different, and you can query it because it's querying it through the graph with a TO, not the base table. Okay. If we got time, ask me about the relationship graph at the end as well. Okay. But that's the key difference, Michael.
Yeah, I'll add that I have had that problem. I've gone back to revisit OData after a long time looking at a different file, and I know what the base table is, and I'll put my query as the base table, and I won't get anything back because it's not on the graph.
Yeah, so Mike has just said, if you come back to something and somebody else has removed something or changed the name, your queries might break. So it's not dynamic in that sense. But that's, we have to cope with that with execute SQL and various other things as well. So let's look at 3 or 4 specific things about new things that are in OData now. First is casting, making something into something else. So I have a field, and I want to get the total value back. Okay, so in there we've got a value of 2345. Okay, very, very simple. If I add to the URL /edm.string, that same query brings back 2345 as a string. Okay, so that says, here's an answer, but now I'd like you to give it to me as a string, please. Okay, got that? Not difficult. EDM stands for Entity Data Model, by the way. This helps where we have stored a very long number in a FileMaker field. So the getUID number is a very, very long number, or it may be that whatever your process is a very long numeric value. You can get that back by querying OData as a value that looks like a number. But now I can explicitly make that very long number into a string. And we all know why, don't we? Because if you get back a very long number in a JSON object into FileMaker, you then can't query the JSON object because it doesn't support numbers that are that long. That's a JSON issue, not a FileMaker issue in that sense. It's allowing you to send a very long number, but it won't let you get it back. So if you did the UID number, you can't do a JSON get element on it afterwards. Casting also works for lots of other types of fields. They have different names: date, time, offset, date, time of day. I think you can guess what those might be. So we can make a date field into a date, time, offset field. We're going to see an example of that now. And these are all of the OData types that are available. Now, they don't necessarily map to FileMaker field types. So we don't have a byte type of field. Well, there is a binary field, but we have a special thing for containers. They're treated as streaming objects, so a container isn't a binary object, it's an EDM stream, just for reference. But those are the types that we could theoretically cast something as. That would be your homework. Go and try everything and see what happens when you cast it. So we can say, in the project, filter the projects, and I'm going to cast the total as a string to be equal to 2345. We know that 2345 is a number. This is just an example, clearly. But I can say, OK, give me back that field where pretend that the field was a string and make it this value. I can take the total and say, oh, I'd like it back as an integer 64 value or an integer 32 value. We'll see in a moment, again, why that might or might not make sense. So here's that query working. Filter the project where the total, when you make it a string, is 2345. The answer it gives back in the middle, total, is 2345 as a number. So it's not modifying the data it's giving back. It's just modifying how you did the filter. OK, following? Watch the video later. What you can't do, which I thought would be really smart, is use the cast in order by. So I thought, here's an idea. So we get back things in numerical order. I wonder if you converted it to strings, would you be able to get it back in string order? Doesn't work. It's not supported. OK, that's just saved you half an hour, hopefully. I've got, at the top, I've done a query for this timestamp field. So that's how it comes back, Zulu time as we call it. So proper reverse notation with a Z or Z at the end. If I cast that to be an edm.date, here's a timestamp field, just give it me back as a date. That's saved you a custom function or two, hasn't it? Okay. It works the other way round. So that field is a date field, but I've said, could you give it me back as a date time offset answer? It has no time component, so it just adds 0, 0, 0, 0 to the answer, but it comes back as a formatted timestamp, which again, if you need to use that to push into an API, then that's helpful, I'm going to say. The long number field, at the top there's a long number. If I cast that long number as an integer 64, two things happen. I lose data, and the data I get back isn't at all related to any of the numbers that are in that long number. Those of us, like Jesse and I, who program in Java a lot, understand about those types. You just can't make that thing fit into that thing. Just doesn't work. Okay? So again, making sure that you understand what data you're going to get back is really helpful. It's a FileMaker mantra. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Another new feature, parameterization. Those of us who are good at or practiced in writing execute SQL statements in which we're doing something equals question mark and then we stick parameters at the end, allow us to build a string without lots of close to speech marks, ampersand field name, ampersand speech, because that's tedious. We just put the field name at the end. This now works in OData. We can accept parameters in our URL string. The parameter is prefaced by the @ symbol. So find me that project, the @p1 project. And then at the end, I've said, what does P1 stand for? It's a UID. Okay? That, again, simple example. That's to demonstrate the concept. It works in a filter, and it works like this way. Find me a project where the total is less than this thing. This thing is 50. So because the 50 is right at the end, it means that string remains a string as we write the query, and we just change the 1 value at the end. I think it makes it neater and easier. It makes it slightly more difficult to read the code if you're not used to it, because it's a new thing. You can use, clearly, the point about parameters is you can use it multiple times inside a query. So find the projects where the total is greater than something and the cost is less than something, and the something is 50. So find me £50 jobs where I've made a profit. Okay, so and clearly you can use that parameter as many times as you like. You can also do maths on it as well, or math as you call it over here apparently. Filter the projects where the total is less than this thing times 2, and the cost is less than this thing, and this thing is 50. So that would be, find me something where the total is less than 100 and the cost is less than 50. Okay? So you can read it backwards into English, just helps you interpret it. It's a great Microsoft article to learn more about parameterization if you're interested in implementing it. So again, part of the issue, let's go back to the first thing I talked about. It's not just for you as a FileMaker developer. If somebody who knows how to speak OData knows that parameters are available, they can be writing queries this way that now FileMaker supports to be able to get data back. So you could build an interface which says, plug in a couple of numbers and then run a query based on that number. Put in a different number, get back a different answer. Okay? So the mathematical operators, we got used to GT for greater than, GE for greater than or equals, EQ for equals. These are the words you need to use if you want to do maths within the URL. They're all quite obvious, but you just have to learn them. So it's like second year French, just learn them. So here's some queries, those queries with it working. Find where the total is greater than or equal to this thing times 2 and the cost is less than or equal to this thing. This thing's 2,000. So this matches. The cost 2,000 and the total's 4,000. That matches the set of parameters I just put in. Find me something where the cost less 300 is equal to 2,000. Okay, so the maths works. Again, homework, go and start experimenting. That's the purpose of the session. Next new feature. The way that nesting of select and filter works has been modified in a way that makes it easier for us to write complicated queries. It can shorten what we're doing. So I'm going to go, for this client, I want to select some projects, but I want to filter the projects that have this unique ID. Okay, so the filter is inside the select on the projects. Okay. The trick with OData a little bit is to read it from right to left, so kind of work backwards as to what's happening. So that would return a client. It returns a client who has projects where the unique ID of the project is equal to this, but you've asked at the beginning for a client. Next line down, if I filter for a unique ID of a client to be equal this, and I say, oh, just select the projects, what I get back is not project data. What I get back is a link to a project for the client. OData is a navigational construct. So it goes, here's how to get to that piece of data that you think you want. You've asked me how to get there, but what it can return to you is a navigational object. Michael?
Yeah, on the first line, so if you have a client and they have 6 projects, will you get back 1 client record and 6 project records?
That's an excellent question, and you will see that in a moment. Michael just said what you're going to get back if they've got more than 1 project. Okay. If you want to get back the project data for the client, then we have to use the expand. So for those of us in the old days who used repeating fields, which are not actually the work of the devil, honestly, there's those commands to extend the calculation. This does the same with data. So I want to filter the clients where the unique ID is this, but what I want to expand is the project, and from the project, what I'd like you to give me back is the description and the total. Yeah. That's how the expand works. So it kind of goes, instead of just, if I just say give me project, it will give you the project, how to get to the project. If I say expand, it says now give me the data from that record. So let's see that may be working. So that query said, can I have the client where this is true? Can I have the project, but can I expand it? If they've got any projects, can you give me back the description and the total? So in this case, they have 2 projects. Didn't need to filter them. It just said, give me back them all. But I'm just interested in the description and the total.
Do you need to have a relationship in your graph to have this work, or will it work it out itself, the relationship between the projects and your client?
So that's, Jan just said, how does that work out? OData does actually use the relationship graph to do this. I can relate 2 tables that are not related on the relationship graph with a thing called a cross join. So that's like we do in execute SQL, where you kind of join 2 things that don't have to be joined on the graph. But I have to make the join happen for the query. This is using the relationship graph. So the client has a project table and there is a join between them. It is using the relationship graph. Therefore, be careful about what you ask OData to do in your systems, because if you've designed them really badly, OData will not perform well. And it's your fault, not anybody else's fault. Let's be true. Salvatore.
Doesn't that make the OData queries not context independent, like you said at the beginning?
It's layout context independent is what I should really have said. So it is, it's clearly, it has to be some context. The context is a table of data. It's not context-less, but it is using the relationship graph to be able to do that specific query. It's best when those relationships are really simple. So if you have a really complicated relationship graph, have a little corner where you just create some TOs that are just linked to each other and called sensible things for the bits you want to query in OData. That'll work. If instead I'd said, find the clients and just select the projects, the bottom line is what you get back. It's a project navigation link. That says, how do you get to the projects that belong to this client? Not what's in the projects, but how do you get there? So you would replace, you could extract that string, stick it into URL, do another query. So if you're doing web development, somebody needs to know that's how that might work. Do a second query that says, OK, now I can, if you click this button, show me the project, and it'll go and do another query and bring back the projects.
That's the same as the at ID. It looks like.
Yes, it is.
Does OData know what you?
Does OData know what your primary keys are? The thing that defines what is a key in your FileMaker tables is the tick box that says this field is unique. If there are no fields in your table that are ticked as unique, it uses the internal record ID. If you've ticked anything, so your parent ID, whatever you're calling it, whatever you've ticked to say this is unique, FileMaker returns it, assumes it's a key value, because it can be treated as a key because it's unique. We'll talk about a special case for that in a moment. The other thing we can now get is a thing called $ref. So if I get this client for these projects /$ref, it is literally not going to give me back any client data, but just the references to the projects. Okay? So I'm expecting to get back one or more IDs, which are links to them. For those of you who use the Microsoft Graph API to manage users and groups, to add a user to a group, you do a post command, and what you post is an @ref to the user that you have set up. Okay. Conversely, that's how you delete a user from a group. So the reference is saying, oh, this is a reference to something else. Use that. So we can now get them back from FileMaker. So the bottom one shows, show me the clients and the projects, and show me the references. And in this case, this one has 2, and therefore it's just showing me 2 values for how to get to those particular projects. Okay. Very lightweight, because it's not returning any client data, it's not returning any project data, it's just saying here's a link to it. I know there are 2. If you wanted to do further in-depth analysis, that's where you'd follow.
There's no filter for that. Is this working because there's only one client?
This says, there's more data off the bottom of this. This says, give me back clients who've got projects and give me the references to those projects. Yeah. I haven't done the whole screen grab because you wouldn't be able to read it. Again, it's when you get this, go and play with it, see what you get back. Create a simple file, do some queries. excuse me, the next new feature in a we're saving the best till nearly the last is the use of in our queries. So at the moment, we have to write something like, find me this, filter this, where the description is this, or the description is this, or the description is this, and the description isn't this, or it's this. And that clearly can get very tedious, particularly as you can't hard code it if you want to be doing it dynamically. You have to have a builder to do that. Now, filter can take a comma-separated list of possible values. So find me the projects where the description is in Billy or Bertie. So previously I'd had to write find me where the description is Billy or the description equals Bertie. So a comma-separated list of legal values. It only works since 21.1.1. Some of the other things that I've indicated may or may not fudge and work backwards. This definitely doesn't. But it does significantly shorten and simplify how we do our queries.
Sorry. Hi, my name's Thomas. Hey, how are you? And I want to know if that also can be coded so that it's a query instead of a hard-coded list. You provided two values.
Thomas just asked, I've provided two hard-coded values in there for the example. That can be a query that gives you back a comma-separated list of things, but the things aren't quoted with double speech marks, they're things with single speech marks. So you have to do a query that single quotes every one of the values for text, okay? This is that query running. Find me the projects where the description is either Billy or Bertie by using the in. It does also work with numbers. So numbers are slightly easier to work with because we don't have to quote them in any way. So this query says, find me something where the status is in 1 or 2 or 3. And there's 3 records, and you can see that the status is either 1 or 2 or 3. Okay? I think that's a really powerful addition to how we conceptually approach writing our queries, because it properly simplifies what we can do. So how we're doing for time. That's all right. So let's look at counting. I habitually, when I'm doing a filter, I habitually put and $count is true on the end, okay? Instead of getting an array, having to do JSON list keys, do a value count of the list keys to work out how many things there are, why not get them to tell me how many there are? So this particular query is potentially returning 40 values. However, if you decide that you only want the top 5, so you've added and $top equals 5 to the end of the query, I should have done a quiz, hands up, what do you think you're going to get back? Because what you actually get back is 40, not 5. You get back the count of the found set, but you've said, just give me 5 of the answers. So it's like filtered portals. The portal contains all of the values. You're just filtering it to the ones you want to see. All of the values are still there in the portal.
You say it's akin to a limit?
It works with limits as well. It's the same thing. So if you're doing a filter, so it's doing a query for find all the records that have got this condition, the $count will tell you how many records meet the condition, regardless of how many you ask back, okay? So again, you have to know that you've added a top, and so that 40 now is the found set, not the returned set. Here's an interesting quirk, and I'm not sure I know yet whether it's a bug or not. So let's ask, what do you think is going to happen if I return top equals 0? Dun, dun, dun.
You get 40.
You don't. You get back 0 as the count. It's found 40 records, but you've said don't give me any back, and so it said the count is 0. Again, I don't know if that's a bug or not, or whether it's by design. So the first one is, give me back the 40 records, the count is 40. Give me back 40 records, but give me the top 5, gives you 40. Give me back top of 0, gives you back 0. And the value is obviously an empty array because you said none. So you can't use it, you can't use that construction to just find how many records might match this condition, okay? Which I thought was a trick. When we had to pay for data, I thought, here's a smart way, so don't give me any data back, just tell me how many. Doesn't work. Really sorry.
Sorry, is there a reference platform for OData that we could use to see how this stuff is supposed to work?
Is there a reference platform for OData? All the documentation you can find by searching for OData on the internet. So the interesting issue is, so OData is an independent standard. If you claim that you have this level of conformance, you have to be able to demonstrate that those things work. It's up to each vendor as to which bits of the specification beyond that they employ. And like SAP do, and to some degree Claris do, you can add your own stuff over the top. So there is vendor-specific things, and you can choose what you do and don't implement. Microsoft, who invented OData in the first place, if you look at the Graph API and go, oh, this would really work if I do this query, it uses OData 3, and some things are not supported by Microsoft, who wrote it. Okay? Go figure, as you say.
If you run a query for a billion records, will FileMaker run out of memory or will it stream it?
We're going to talk about that in a moment. Jesse wants to query 1 billion records. So there's just the screenshots showing it's true. If you put top equals 0, you get a count of 0 and an empty object. Large sets, so you're just there ahead of me. Every single vendor also has a choice of their maximum number of records they will return to you. Many vendors are at lower limits than FileMaker. It's published data. FileMaker will only ever give you back 10,000 records as a maximum in one go. The answer is paged. So in addition to the data, you get back a skip token, which says, oh, now you need to use this and run this query because this is basically going to skip the 10,000 and do the next 10,000. And then you'll get another skip token to get the next. So to do 1 billion records, you'd be doing several hundred queries. But my question would be, why would you do that?
Well, there are good reasons to do it.
Yep.
What would happen if you if you were doing an order by, so they were coming, well, if you requested 10,000 records and then you deleted one of them and then you did the skip, get the next batch, would that be repeated? First element, would you get one repeated element?
So as Jesse said, if you get 10,000 records back, then you delete one, and then you use the skip token to get the next 10,000. Has one got missed because it got moved down to the previous 10,000? I don't know. Because I haven't ever done that.
And if there's an expensive script or query that you're running, that's going to be rerun for each batch that you get.
So the reason for doing the 10,000 is to stop choking the server. If you literally said, give me back 1 million records, at some point you've got a beach ball situation going on and it's happening on the server, and then all your other processes stop, and then you wonder why it's crashed. Okay? So this is a way of limiting the impact on the server in terms of doing the query. So you can't page it fast enough to kill it because you've had to read the skip token and then go, okay, start again. Give me the next 10,000. Oh, start again, give me the next 10,000. So you're giving the server a bit of breathing space to do that. That's a really good question about what happens if you delete one. I want to know why you might be doing that, because I would imagine what you're wanting to do is read 30,000 records so you can do some other aggregation, export it, show it in a web viewer. I don't know. Michael?
After this, I'm going to try with the OData, but for now, with the data API, I'm querying a FileMaker database that has millions of records, and I'm searching for something that is flagged, but I limit it to 1,000 records because I get 1,000 back, and that seems to work fine. If I didn't limit it, I mean, it would choke, but I'm only, I get those 1,000 records back and it just keeps on going.
Yeah, so Michael's just talked about limiting it. There are two ways to limit what you get back in the OData query. Use $top equals, so just give me back 1,500. You can also do that limiting in a header, the prefer header. OData.max page size effectively does the thing. So instead of using 10,000 as your page size, as your paging size, use 1,500 instead. So it will go 1,500. Oh, there's more. Oh, there's more. I have tested that. There's no difference in the speed whatsoever. So you don't get an advantage putting it in the header in any way. Salvatore. Oh, except what you get back in the header indicates that you've asked for a max page size when you use that as the header. But most of us are not using.
I just wanted to ask, did you check if there's a difference in the dollar count behavior between using paging or top?
No difference in the dollar count if you use either of those methods.
Okay, so it will, in the at count, it will still give you the total font set.
Yep. But in this particular case, you know you're querying a large set, so the count is not relevant because you know you're going to get however many up to the max. And you've either got to go, I did just ask for a large number, I know it's more than 10,000, therefore I've got 10,000. Do it again. If I have another 10,000, that's now I've got 20,000 or I've got 30,000. Okay. I was having a conversation with Brother Todd of this parish a few months ago about a very interesting scenario. So you have a legacy system where you have some kind of field which is ticked as unique, and therefore OData sees it as a key. For reasons which are not apparent to you because you were not responsible for designing it, another field is also ticked as unique. I have one where a staff ID is unique, but the initials field also has to be unique because they use the initials somewhere else. So two people with the same name same first and last name, can't generate the same initials. So they want those two unique things. OData will see both of those as a key field. So we had a conversation about, so I would normally go, if I'm addressing a specific record, clients, open brackets, the unique ID or whatever the key field is, close the brackets, look at that one record. I can look at one record, but give it both key field values, and that's how to do it. So find me the client, give me the client where the unique ID is this unique ID, and this other key is this other value. It's going to give you about one record because it's both true. The interesting thing was around the conversation that doesn't work if one of your fields is called ID. And I do know that mentioning to FileMaker developers that you should maybe not call your fields ID is enough to make some people's heads explode. Genuinely, you can't tell me to do that. It just doesn't work. So if you're doing that methodology, a very interesting potential use case where you have half of the data and a user has half of the data, and you want to return a value to them where they've supplied something, but you've supplied the other key. Yeah? So we have ways in FileMaker of limiting records based on your logged in and this kind of thing. This is a way to do it with OData. You supply a piece of the data, I supply a piece of the data that I know is linked to you, so I'll give you the record that is linked to you as the owner or technician or whatever. Don't know if I've put it into production, but the fact it works is a very interesting, hadn't thought about that. It does work. A couple of other tips. If you add / $value at the end of what you're asking for, so find me this project, find me the name field, and give me the value, it returns just the value. If I say, find me the projects and the name field and / $count, it returns just the count. Here is it working. Oh, here's the first query working. I've asked for a record where I'm saying this key is this and this other key is this. It does just give me one record. Those two values match the two values that are in the URL string. There's the UID, and the other key is 22 in this case. So back query is, I've asked for the description field from this project. There it is. It's come back as a piece of JSON. If I just say $value, it gives me the value back as a string of text. There are times when that may be really useful. If you know you're getting back this thing, instead of getting a JSON object and then doing a JSON get element on the thing to get the thing out of the thing, just get the value back. It just saves a couple of steps. There's no difference in the actual value, the data returned. When I said at the beginning, oh, you can now drop the dollars in front of things. However, if you do /value, you can't drop the dollar there because it thinks you're trying to look at something in the path. And it goes, no, value is not defined in this database. So you can't drop the dollar everywhere. I've tended to leave them in just because it's easier to check my own work and see that I've done a filter and a select in the right kind of way, and I've got an ampersand in front of it. But again, it works, that, and the bottom one doesn't work. I am, to be fair, patiently waiting for more. We have the opportunity to talk to our favorite Claris engineer and say, John says all of these things could be done. When are you going to do them, please? $compute, being able to do some mathematics or a calculation. Here's a first name, here's a last name, but compute it to be first name space last name, so I can then use it in a query. That's not currently supported. There's a great header, which is in the documentation, omit values equals nulls. Wouldn't it be brilliant to get back FileMaker data from a large table in which the only data you get back is all the fields that have data in them, not a list of fields that have no data in them. Unless you want to do a query later that says, is there an answer in there? I think it'd be a great way to just skinny down what we're getting. Big one, it's supported. The line underneath is where to read about it on Microsoft. Batches are the only thing at the moment where we don't talk JSON to the OData API. We have to write a batch like a multi-part email with boundaries and character 10 and doing all of the content lengths. It's really tedious, and lots of people I know ask queries about it and very few people implement it because it's hard work. And it doesn't perform very well. Somebody asked a question on the forum the other week about, oh, we're doing this and they did this and they got loads of batches and we want to do this because it's transactional. It's taking 8 minutes to process. So I said, run a script at the other end. And they went, oh, it's gone from 8 minutes to 8 seconds. That was a bit of a result, wasn't it? There is a way to support writing a batch in JSON. I'd love it to be implemented because then all the communication we can do is with JSON. We're using the JSON tools that we know and love. If match and if non-match headers. So this is to do with if upserting is the concept. If it's there, make it. If it's not there, if it's there, patch it. If it's not there, post to it. Okay. So here's a query, and if nothing matches this, do this other thing. We're not getting the if non headers back. Jesse.
Is there a built-in function like there is with web publishing to get the
Jesse wants to know if you can get mod count back.
Because that was typically the way you would do, if match was implemented, you would make sure that you weren't clobbering a value by making a modification count.
Yeah, so modification count, the answer is not easy. Don't rely on you ever working out a way to do that. I think it could be. It's not exposed. And it's to do with Claris not supporting e-tags, technically. So if they supported e-tags, you'd get that information. A couple of things that don't work. Find me the clients where the count of the project is 2. That doesn't work. saying here's projects and put $expand, so just give me the answer back. It's in the documentation, it's not supported at a native higher level with the tables. That would be great if it were. Is also not supported. So being able to know if a field is of a particular type doesn't work. And the concept of deep updating, being able to update the parent and the child record all in one go. So I want to know, is of the long number a string type? And the answer is of is not supported. I'd love it to be. Good, we've got a bit of time. Things that I've been doing for the last 12 months that are my stuff I'm doing with OData, just a couple of ideas. Other people in the room have great ideas. Love to hear from you later, the kinds of things you're doing with OData that are not my use cases. Work with higher education. People have an Excel template that gets filled with student data that is the same from year to year. Take it as a CSV file. You can read the CSV file using the open data file script steps into memory, write some OData to push that wherever you like. Because you know the difficulty of saying, here's an Excel file, but this data's across 3 tables, the OData query can go, oh, these first columns go to this table, and the next 3 columns go to this table. Now I've written that as an OData script, when somebody gives me that same data next year, I can just go, oh, there you go, thank you very much, script is done. It'll just go off and do the import. And it's quite easy if you have to add a column to modify that script. If you have to go into the dialog that says modify the import to map the fields, that's not the simplest thing in the world. When you haven't got the new data, you have to fake import it to get the new field. The other thing I've been doing for the last few months, I'm a big fan of Otto, I have to say, not getting paid for that publicity, but working with a client who uses jot forms extensively, sticking a webhook onto everything that turns up in a file that then you process the inbound data on the basis of, does it need to be there? Does it need to be there? Do I need to check if that's right first? Do I need to set up both the person and the address and the phone number and the email because they're in separate tables? If a record already exists, patch it. If not, post it. Written some scripts around that. The key thing there is, for me, that's not done in client time. Nobody's pressing a button for that to happen. It's on the basis that a webhook comes in to the server, runs a script on the server. If it takes 10 seconds to resolve, do I really care? Because nobody's watching it. All I need to know is it happens. And the magic is that something comes in, 10 seconds later, somebody's got those answers on the screen in front of them. They think it's magic, because it is. And for me, the big thing is you're not having to set up external data sources from this file to all these other things with issues about how permissions work and all that kind of stuff. And you can pick up this file and put it on another server temporarily, and the code all still works. That's what I love about OData as that piece of communication. It works the same for Data API as well. So I've kind of, just a quick how I'm doing code. Here's the data package. If something exists, then I'm getting back a unique ID, doing a filter on it, setting up a patch. Otherwise, the filter doesn't need to exist. The options are a post, but I'm adding a couple of bits of extra dates, a couple of bits of things to the data, and then I'm doing an insert from URL. So that's my method of doing that. And the other thing I've started doing, just as a tip thing, we have this great making arrays using the plus and colon sign. If you haven't used it, make a new thing in the array. And because that's currently open, add this thing to it, and this thing to it, and this thing to it. Oh, and then do another line and do all of that. I'm explicitly adding, in this case, it's a bunch of attachments. I'm adding what the count of the attachments is. So at the other end, I don't have to do a query that says how many values are in this array, because it's like me providing my own version of the at count. Just a little tip. Found that very useful. And now we have exactly 5 minutes for any questions that you like.
I'm just curious, what parameters do you use to decide when to use the data API versus?
What's my choice between when to use data API, it's a fun thing you find it's called, and OData? The answer is I don't use data API at all anymore. I did when it first came out. I have a couple of systems where I implemented it. When I go back in and find that code, I go, yeah, I'm not doing that anymore. And I convert it to OData. I exclusively use OData. Now,
One word, layout.
so again, Bev?
One word, layout.
Thank you. You will have picked up from the opening session that a lot of development is going on with OData behind the scenes. Claris have added it to how that connector works. It was just using data API. It's now using primarily OData. As a result, I know that Clay and his team have done lots of improvements to OData because some other team in Claris said we need it, and we're the beneficiaries of that. It's slowed down the move to the can we have our own leg, please? But we're getting speed improvements as a result of them eating their own dog food, as we say.
One more question on that. So do you use it internally as well to pull data for like a web viewer or something?
If it has to go outside then, right?
It has to go, so do I use it internally? It has to go to the server to run the query to come back. If you use execute data API script step to get a thing off a layout that's in this file, I've found it's not necessarily faster than doing the OData query, particularly if your OData query is well formed and you're only getting back a little bit of data. So that you have to measure some stuff. Is that faster or is that faster? The data API is consequentially slower because you have to ask for a token, then make another request with the token, and theoretically get rid of the token, because otherwise you'll choke your server if you leave all the tokens open. Okay, so that's 3 calls versus 1. It uses a relationship graph. If the query you're asking is across a relationship graph that's badly formed, the query won't be performant, and that is your fault, not Claris's fault. Okay, genuinely, please get that in your head. That's why when you do a query and it's slow, and then you run the query immediately after, it's now half a millisecond because it's cached a bunch of data somewhere to run the query. That's just how that works. But exclusively, I'm an OData fan.
How do you determine what version of OData you're running on, 4.0 versus?
How do you determine what version? That's a really good question. If you do a $metadata as your first thing, even if you just go, here's a thing, here's a file, /$metadata, you will get back in there what version of OData you are running. Sorry, I didn't cover that, but that just helps you.
But by default, it will take the newest version now, or not? Will it use the V1 4.1 or V4, the older version?
So this is about versions. The latest version of server, and since 21, has been running 4.01. They introduced it and then told people, oh, we might have introduced that. And that's why I found out that the count broke, because I just updated the server. And it's like, my code doesn't work anymore. That's why you need to know that. But once you know it, that's you as a developer just going, OK, this file has this version, therefore this code works in this version, and or keep all your servers up to date. Oh no, there's some crises with servers. Don't do that necessarily, because they're a little bit broken. Got time for another one. Anybody else? I'm happy to chat to people in the corridor, clearly.
When were you, first of all, there was no mention of scripts. Does OData support scripts?
Yes, absolutely. OData does support scripts in the same way that the ODBC and Data API do. It's the same thing. You send a script parameter value to it. It runs a script. So that is exactly the same as you would expect. It has to spin up a pseudo client to work on. The script is a FileMaker script. All FileMaker scripts are layout context bound. So regardless of what you do, it's on some layout, even if what you're doing is saying run a script to do an execute SQL and give me the answer back. It has to be on whatever the opening layout is. But you can navigate round in your script. You can do whatever you like.
And second question. I know when I'm using the data API, for some of my clients with very complex relationship graphs, it might take me 20 or 30 seconds to get it, get a login. And then the queries are very fast. So we're using basic authentication and sending that on every request. Is there a speed hit on the request similar?
So the question is around the speed of getting the token back. That's to do with the server. The server starts the session and gives you the token back. So that's something to do with the load the server is under at the time. The query takes the time that the query takes to do. So if you have I'm taking 20 seconds to get a token, I'd measure, if I did that same thing as OData, I don't have to get the token, what's the comparative speed of getting it back as an execute data API query versus no data query? Because you would theoretically lose that first 20 seconds of slowness. Because it's not doing anything, it's just going, you have permission to be here. Right, okay, what do you want? That's basically what the server's doing. Thank you.